Hello everyone, and welcome back to another ant keeping video. And wow, it has been a while since my last long video, but in that time some things have been happening with my colonies, and I even have a few new additions. So before we get into the main part of today's video, I will cover some short colony updates. So let's get right into it. First of all, my favorite colony of my collection has been doing well, although growing quite slowly, and that of course is my Myrmecocystis mexicanus, whose setup looks different than before. They needed more outworld space, so I added a second mini hearth, this time the normal size rather than the XL. Finally, they moved almost fully into the new nest, which is great because I am able to film them better through the clear glass. I am moving them into a Tarhulant's fortress when they grow out of this setup, and I might add a mini hearth onto it, as it might not be big enough. Next, the terrarium bicarinatum has also been growing very slowly, even though I have been feeding them 2 to 3 times a week. It seems like they are the same size as the last update. They also hate it when their nest gets the littlest bit too dry, and they annoyingly move into the tube connecting to their outworld. Third, the terrarium immigrants have been growing slow and steady as well, but they are definitely growing. This is the biggest colony in my collection, raised by me from a singular queen. The Aphaenogaster occidentalis is purposefully the same size as last time. I control their growth with feeding rates, as I'd like to keep them at this size. They are pretty cool ants, and they love to build and dig. This is an underrated species in my opinion. It is my oldest colony at 2 years old. The Pogonomyrmex rugosus have been doing very well, growing very quickly, and have fully recovered from losing half the colony after my error of forgetting to refill the water. They now have plenty of healthy fat larvae and around 10 workers, with a lot more to come. They seem to be aggressive yet timid, as some will attempt to defend themselves upon opening the outworld, while some will run into the nest. My Messer barbarus has truly been Messer stressors, as they go crazy when exposed to light. They are growing very steadily with some brood and love insect. Finally, my Camponotus vicinus black variety that I unboxed on this channel about a year ago has just not been able to get going. They still have one worker. They had some hope when the queen laid new eggs, but the larvae unfortunately died. I also have some new colonies and queens, including 9 Pogonomyrmex californicus queens, 5 species of Camponotus, and a Forelius colony. I caught a lot during anting, but they will all get their respective videos elaborating on them. Now, the main part of this video, my new terrarium. This took so long to get together, but has been worth making. I bought a 40-gallon tank, maybe 30 pounds of clay balls, decorations including driftwood and moss, a shade cloth, and activated carbon. The first thing I did was take some of the silicone off of the edges of the tank. Since the tank was going to be open, I needed to apply escape prevention on the top sides of it. The escape prevention Fluon is pretty much useless when applied to silicone, so I wanted to remove it at the top. All I did was take a hairdryer and heat up the silicone. I then took a knife and scraped it off. The heating makes this process easier. I did the best I could with removing it, but I had a bit left off. After I finished, I applied the Fluon. Since there was still a small bit of silicone at the top edges, I put some olive oil around the lip of the tank where the lid goes, just to be extra safe. After the escape prevention was done, you want to start assembling the actual terrarium. The first thing I did in assembling was apply the clay balls to the bottom. You can also use pebbles, but clay balls are a lighter alternative. You want 1 to 2 inches of your drainage layer. After putting 2 inches of clay balls down, I used some cut shade cloth to completely cover the clay balls. This is called the separation layer. The purpose of this is to have something that can let water through the drainage layer, but keep ants and roots from penetrating it. After the separation, I put a layer of activated carbon, which is optional. It helps the soil stay cleaner. I only had a little bit, so I put that in as well. Next is the main part of the terrarium, the substrate. I used some soil from my backyard and filled up the tank about halfway. This is where the ants will dig. I used my soil because it is cheaper than buying it and has useful critters like worms, springtails, and isopods, which will eat the ant feces and organic matter in the terrarium, making cleaning way easier. Finally, to get the final look, I placed in some decorations. I went with adding a mix of white and natural sand, small rocks, moss, and 5 different driftwood pieces. This is my final terrarium look. What do you think? I think the mixture of white and natural sand gives it a very natural look, but allows you to still see the black ants walk around in it. I made sure to leave lots of space at the front, which became their feeding area, and the area where the ants are most visible. All that was left to do now was add the ants. I chose another Aphaenogaster occidentalis colony, a forest species to fit the terrarium's environment, and like I said earlier, one that loves to dig, perfect for natural setup. If you make a desert terrarium, you should use a desert ant, but I made a more foresty terrarium, so I used an ant that lives in the mountains. They had about 100 workers and 10 to 12 queens. To transfer them to the new home, I took their tar heel and mini hearth and placed them in the tank. I then removed the glass, resulting in them exploding out of the nest immediately, ready to attack whoever just broke into their nest. They immediately started exploring their surroundings and realized they must move the colony from potential danger. The queens and brood were eventually moved out. They initially decided to nest inside this hollow wood opening and under a piece of moss. They started digging a bit later, while the brood and queens stayed in their temporary nesting areas. While all this was happening, I decided to feed some mealworm for the first time in a new space. I almost forgot to mention this species doesn't have a social stomach, so they must eat the food themselves, leading to a relatively large feeding response. They also must bring their food to their nest. Here's a time lapse. Now, they have settled into the tunnels they built. You can see a few tunnels on the side, but I can tell they branch off towards the middle, where the bulk of the colony is most likely residing. That should wrap up today's video. Now it's the summer, I'm less busy, resulting in more time to make videos. So make sure to subscribe to see all those, or you may never see me again. I will continue to update you guys on this Aphenogaster occidentalis colony in this terrarium, along with my other colonies. I will try to make a more consistent upload schedule, throwing a few shorter videos in as well, without commentary. Thanks everyone for watching, and peace out.